Dr. David Bray, what is going on, brother? How you doing?
Doing good. Just living the dream. Someone else's dream, obviously.
Oh, of course, someone else's dream for sure. Dude, you are an interesting person because you are my first return guest.
That's right. I like to tell people I'm like that bad rash that won't go away and keeps coming back.
Oh, man, and it just keeps on itching, Dr. Bray. Dude, okay, all right. I got to fill you in. On some things. So you see this depiction of my ego on my coffee cup. So me being a capitalist, of course, and wanting to increase my quality of what I provide here, right? I bought 55 of these cups, not from China. I bought it from America.
Patriot.
I know, man. It's like I got a flag there or something. So I bought it from America, and granted, it cost me a little bit more, right? But I'm going to sell them. And hopefully those funds are going to go into increasing the quality, so I can move on and build on and offer whatever it is that I can offer here. But that being said, next time you come and talk to me, people who come and talk to me, they get a mug for free. So you get to take home a mug with my ego, plastered on the front, and you get to drink coffee and think of me.
I've got a leaky corner of the condo that I could put that there to catch the water. I'm just kidding.
I could think of no better way to use it.
No leaky places of the condo, thank God.
Well, I want to get started, man. How you doing? What's going on? Anything crazy happened since last time we talked?
Nothing much. Had a MDJ, Marietta Daily Journal article come out. And before I get going, let me give my disclaimer that I'm here today as Professor David Bray, the U.S. proud citizen and taxpayer of the great state of Georgia. And all of my comments are my own. They may be shared by millions of people, but they are proud words from my pie hole.
Well, okay. Thank you. MDJ, what's going on there?
So, about a year and a half ago, I think it was, I had a parent come to me, a parent who served our country in the military. I thanked him for his service. You would think that the university would also thank him for his service. However, that's not what happened. He came to me, he gave me his letters that he had written to University President Pam Whitten at the time, and other people in the state of Georgia, highlighting the ignorance of one of our faculty members in the psychology department. On her syllabus, she had different policies for different skin colors, right? And to me, that just blows my mind. I would think that that would be discriminatory on its face. On her syllabus, it had white people must follow these policies and students of color get to follow these policies. First of all, the term student of color is just divisive, right? It's basically us versus them. Whites versus all non-whites, and that's kind of what's going on in our society now. But so he complained, lodged a formal complaint with the university as well as the Office of Institutional Equity. There's that dangerous word, equity. And of course, they responded to him saying, there's no violation of KSU policy or Board of Regents policy or any type of civil rights problem. And that I find to be mind-boggling and totally enraging, so to speak.
What did the MDJ say about that?
So the MDJ said nothing about those documents that I handed them. So I still have them for the right news media source. And basically, they quoted me a couple of quotes, which were correct. I said those things and stand by them. But they mentioned nothing about this professor's I guess I would call it belittling of white students, because the policies were clearly preferential to students of color. It said things like, students of color, if you feel like you need to leave for the day and come back whenever you're ready, go for it. But basically, white students, keep your ass in the seats. I can't imagine what's going through the mind of white students in that class. I didn't have an experience like that when I was in college. Who knows how I would have reacted, but 25 years ago, we didn't focus on people's skin color as much.
Well, aren't you glad, Dr. Bray, that you have a coffee table to sit at and you're able to discuss these things?
Sure. I love being a proud Georgian and, Floridian by birth, but Georgian by employment. So yeah, I love to come here and spill the tea. In the gay world, we call it spilling the tea, which basically means telling people things that they might not want to hear.
I heard that, man. You know, it's like you're being real with people, and that's actually an okay thing to do.
Oh, it is?
Oh, yeah, it is. You know, but you got to be careful, though, because you might be speaking to a victim, and you don't want to victimize that victim any more than they are, you know, a victim.
Now, are these imaginary victims that throttle campus all the time, or are these real victims? Is there evidence?
I feel like there's a differentiation there that kind of needs to be talked about. You know, what is a real victim and what is a fake victim, Dr. Bray?
There should be a center on campus where they investigate your claim. Please show us your evidence. Oh, no, these are just called feelings and perceptions, and that's what the psychologists are for, assuming that they went to legit schools and have valid documentation that they know what they're talking about.
Dude, okay, all right. You know, let's actually talk about victimhood here a second. I want you to kind of pull up the stuff that you showed me on your phone while I'm talking. You have students sometimes that'll come up to you, you know, especially me. You know, go figure, conservative individual. I am the KSU College Republican chair. I have my opinions, of course, about all this stuff. But I'll have students come up to me and they'll tell me stories. Now, some of these stories would blow your mind that they occurred on a college campus and they occurred, you know, towards a student. Sometimes it's a situation of a teacher, you know, basically just challenging that student's paradigm, right? That student's ideology, right? And they intend to have a retort back and forth, a healthy retort. And that being said, when individuals come to you with evidence, say, right, in terms of like, I have been a victim, especially of this woke stuff, what's that? What does that look like to you? And I feel like those pictures you got there pulled up on your phone is a great example of what it could look like.
So I'm guessing that I've gotten a couple screenshots sent to me of quiz questions that professors have given to students. They're multiple choice, so they beg an answer. And students obviously want to keep their GPA high, so they're willing to probably look the other way and violate their morals and values and just give the professor what they're looking for. That's called indoctrination/bullshit and should be halted immediately. And so I encourage any student on campus to come to my office. Don't come there all the time. I'm not in there all the time. I'm an academic for a reason, right? But schedule an appointment and we can meet and you can tell me anything you want. I am a big boy. You can use whatever verbiage you'd like. But don't get too crazy. You'll see the exit, right? All right, so here's the question. Marx, M-A-R-X, kind of like Karl Marx, if you've heard of him, has been suspended from school at least 40 times between 9th and 12th grade. To me, that sounds like a shitty individual behavior situation. So maybe we should see, maybe he was fighting and, you know, beating people up. That might be a problem. It says he has been suspended more times than his friends Bob and Matt, who are white. So no mention of skin color of Marx yet. Based on this information, Marx is most likely A, an African-American student, B, an Asian student, C, a non-Latino white student, D, a Native American student. And the answer the professor was looking for is an African-American student. So now Karl Marx is a black boy. And again, there's no mention of individual behavior, which we know, if your brain works, individual behavior leads to individual outcomes. There is no group identity outcome that falls from the group identity God. That's not how life works. So you aggregate these individual outcomes into the group average, and yes, some can be lower than others, but let's talk about within group differences. Why are some people of a certain skin color successful while others who look identical to them not successful? I don't know. That's called individual behavior. And this sounds like an individual behavior issue at school. But the teacher, this professor, at a state-funded, taxpayer-funded institution of higher learning, right, was forcing this answer onto students. And basically that's indoctrinating and pushing either a bias, continuing a bias, but not allowing, and this is online, right? So the professor is not in front of the student can't talk to them. It's a problem.
It is, man. It is a problem. And here's the thing, and we can speak about the next one here in a minute, but I want to focus on this question real quick, because as an individual, you know, who reads this, I read it as like, okay, we have shifted our thought process that perhaps Marx is maybe experiencing something at home. Maybe his parents are going through a divorce and he's manifesting that in an unhealthy way at school, or maybe he's receiving abuse from his home, or some crazy thing, right, that is causing him to act a certain way at school. Instead of teaching that, we're teaching kids future educators, because this came from an education course, right? We're teaching future kids like, no. Don't worry about that. It's most likely coming from race. It's most likely coming from the fact that this guy is a victim of society, a victim of the persistent culture that is white male, privilege run, right? That's a scary thing, because now we're going away from the fact that maybe we have to address something that's going on at home. Maybe this kid is receiving abuse, and we're not actually getting down to the nitty gritty of what is actually occurring. That's scary. That's scary, Dr. Bray. What are your thoughts on that, man?
I mean, it totally avoids the facts of the matter that have been well documented, that 75% of black kids today grow up without a father figure in the home. Well, I don't know about you, but my father figure made me go walk to the closet to get the belt to get an ass whooping. And I'm also a proud, non-arrestee. I've never been to jail or prison. Just one gold star in the column. Not that all people who went there are bad, but I haven't been there yet. And that's because I've realized early on that life has consequences, and that modified my behavior as I became an adult. These types of questions, though, they just fuel the type of animosity that we're all experiencing in social circles, right? These professors, many who are tenured, they're protected by the ivory tower. They come up with these ridiculous statements and push them out off campus through society, but they don't pay the cost. People in society pay the cost. These people are insulated by job security. And I think that's what we need to really put the spotlight on is, are you doing society? Are you producing a good or service that is benefiting society? Or are you just stirring what I call them societal shit stirrers, S cubed? SSS.
Well, yeah, Dr. Bray, that's exactly it. And one of the things that always stuck out to me, and this was really before like the whole woke stuff like really started getting shoved down people's throats in both culture and academia, is in 8th grade. When I repeated 8th grade, for that matter, I found myself reading a book by Dr. Ben Carson. This was before he entered like the political arena. We don't see him much now, of course, but he wrote a book called Gifted Hands. And it was basically a retelling of his life story. Now, this guy, according to these social scientists who know so much about, social structure and how we're, so evil and whatnot, he was, given a situation that he was born into a family, single mother, right? Had a 3rd grade reading level, the mother did. That was pretty much the education of the mother. And in the slums, right? Not necessarily rich at all, quite the opposite. But guess what? He ended up being a top neuroscientist, like one of the best and smartest individuals that has given back to America in ways that we could not fathom. Right? I always say to people, I live in the political realm. So, I say if I met Donald Trump, President Trump, because I served under him in the Marine Corps, right? He was my president when I was a Marine. I'd shake his hand. Absolutely would shake his hand, and I'd tell him, hey, it was a pleasure to serve while you were in office. If I met Dr. Ben Carson, just because of the book that I read, in 8th grade, turned my life around, because I said, if this guy can do it, if this guy can reach up and out of the situation that he was in, given his merit, given the fact that he did not accept the fact that he was going to be a victim, that he's always going to be put down, and he ended up being who he was, that man changed my life. I wouldn't know what to do. If he, I kid you not, man, like if I met him and he put his hand out there for me to shake it, I'd be like, and I'd have to tell him, you changed my life. You did. And he did. And that's what we're not teaching these kids, Dr. Bray, and that's what's being perpetuated at the college. And you're right there at the front of it. I mean, go ahead and bring up, while I'm talking here, go ahead and bring up like the next example of this stuff, because it's crazy, dude. It is absolutely crazy.
Before we move on, it's February, Happy Black History Month. I would also add that Dr. Thomas Sowell is another guy that should be implemented. One of my LinkedIn posts recently was, taxpayers should demand that his findings are implemented in K through 12. Like, it should be mandated that we have to study Dr. Thomas Sowell's findings, because the truth hurts people. But if you don't talk about the truth and the actual problems that exist, you will never pull pull groups of people out of some of the problems and pockets and the cultural differences, right? There are good things and bad things about everybody's cultures, right? The bad things we should leave alone and adopt the better things of other cultures. It's the same thing with white culture, same exact thing, right? So here's the second question. Michael sees his son playing with his sister's dolls and his toy trucks. Instead of asking why he playing with both at the same time, Michael asks if he can play with him. How is Michael improving his communication with his son? Right? By understanding variations in identity, by avoiding social comparisons, by understanding the importance of self-fulfilling prophecies, by challenging his primary identity. Right? And the professor, again, it's multiple choice. It's online. There's no live professor that you can debate or ask, right? Or give your opinion. You have to pick the right answer. And the right answer is the one that the professor and the ideologists, right, are pushing, right? And this isn't a communications class, right? So gender identity isn't a communications class, right? I don't remember ever taking a communications course, but I do remember seeing it on the top 10 worst college majors you could pick, right? So, and that's just a fact. It's not something Dr. Bray made up. The list is public. So it's these types of questions that students are getting that they feel so inclined to go along with what they know the answer is the professor is looking for. And to me, that's just indoctrination. That's not education, and it's not value-based. It's their value-based.
Correct, man. And what you're getting at is the solidification of ideology here in terms of like collegiate indoctrination, if you will. And I wanted to kind of talk to parents about this. You know, if you're a parent and you're listening to this and you have kids in like, you know, elementary and middle school, Dr. Ray, I want to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like in terms of like getting to the college portion and then being solidified in this ideology. Is like in elementary school, you would get presented, and you understand quantitative versus qualitative data. You understand that mathematics is a quantitative subject, right? So, you know, given that, you know, your kid goes to a third grade math class, right? And they get presented the question, little Johnny and his two parents are walking to the market, and the market is X distance, and they're walking at this miles per hour. How long does it take to get to the market? Now, you as the parent, right? You see this when the kid brings it home as homework, as like, oh yeah, this is math. This is math. Yeah, this is absolutely math. The thing is, here's the conversation that's happening in classes. The teacher says, before we talk about this math question, who here has been to the market, right? And you have some kids, they raise their hand, and they have some kids who don't raise their hand. And then the teacher asked people who didn't raise their hand, well, why haven't you been in the market? Oh, well, we can't afford it. You know, the market's a little bit expensive than, you know, what my parents can afford. Oh, and then she asked like, oh, well, who here has two parents like little Johnny here in the example? Oh, you don't have two parents? Why is that? Oh, you don't fit this social paradigm? Oh, why is that? So the parents at home, they see math. But what the kids are being exposed to is social. It's social science where it doesn't necessarily belong. It doesn't belong on this level of thing. These kids are getting indoctrinated, right, from elementary school all the way up until they get to college, and that's when they solidify the ideas. Now, given your existence at college, is that what you're seeing? Are you seeing groups, you know, come up on college campus? Are you seeing programs being implemented where like the solidification is almost being exemplified?
I don't know if I can speak to the exact example that you're referring to. It sounds to me like social justice influencers, right, are training the kids younger, and then they get to college, and then it's kind of like, well, that's their very existence. That's their mental framework. So anything other than social justice must be bad because they've value laden it in K through 12. I think that's what's happening with diversity, equity, and inclusion. The words, they've totally hijacked those three words. And if you disagree with DEI trainings, all of a sudden you're a bad person because how dare you speak bad of this? Well, it's like, no, why don't you define the word, right? And then, oh, if that's we had this happen recently. You know, the DEI expert on campus says, oh, diversity means differences. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's interesting. Why are all 4 staff members female? I don't see any gender difference, but I hear all the time that men are bad. So wouldn't all females be bad? So it's just like, you know, it's just hypocrisy on another level. But when you pin them down and get them to define these words, you'll realize that the left has hijacked the words. and people just go along with it because now the word diversity, if somebody walks around saying the word diversity a lot, that automatically makes them virtuous and a good person, even though their agenda is toxic, right? As far as student organizations go, right, I think it seems like we're moving further and further towards segregation. So it's almost like we're going back to segregation. You hear about black graduations, black dorms, right? And the reason I think in some of the paperwork was, I saw this, there was a BIPOC house. I don't know if you know what BIPOC means. It's an academic term created by Looney Tunes called professors, right? BIPOC stands for Black Indigenous People of Color. That's the BIPOC. So I made my own acronym on LinkedIn called GayPOC. I'm a homosexual person of Caucasia. And people lost their minds. That's probably why I was called a white supremacist, but they could totally kiss my white ass. And it is white. I could prove it. This isn't this kind of show, is it?
No, man, I don't think so. Hey, there are shows out there existing, man. Maybe you could make like a what is it? Gay POC? Did you say gay POC?
Gay POC.
Maybe you could like make a gay POC onlys.com or something like that,
I'll get my manager that doesn't exist on it. These groups, right? You have the Black Student Union, you have this, you have that, right? That's all segregationist, right? They're called affinity groups, right? And so we don't have any affinity group for people with like-minded viewpoints, right? And I have students, former black students, who think the exact same way we do about all of this shit. Right? We need an organization on campus that's an affinity group for people with like-minded viewpoints, because there isn't one yet, and there's no office, and there's no position on the president's cabinet either, and we all pay taxes for the school.
Oh, you gay white supremacist, you.
Well, the only 3 guys I brought home to meet my family are black, so I'm not a very good white supremacist.
Okay, well, Dr. Bray, I gotta ask, man, we joke about it, right? I just kind of made like a little slight, because we like to have fun here. But seriously, man, when somebody comes to you and they say, white supremacist, I'm sure you've already started to deal with it. In fact, I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah. What do you tell them, man? What do you tell them? Like when you say, I want to implement programs on campus where white students can come to me and talk about things, and they say, oh, well, you're a white supremacist. What would you tell them?
Well, I would ask them to spell it. I would ask them to use it in a sentence, and I would ask them to define it. That's where it would all fall apart, because these people are mindless trolls, right? All they do is regurgitate jargon of the far left. They try to silence you. And that's actually, I believe, why we're living the existence we have today, because not enough white men stood up to the non-white men and said, no, you're actually batshit crazy and you're not making sense. So have a nice day. It's easy to do, right? It's easier to do when you're a tenured professor.
I was about to say, man, it'd be a lot easier, right? It's like, oh, well, I feel quite comfortable when I'm out. I'm pretty solidified. I'm just going to say this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, a lot of folks would probably hear what you're saying. At this point and be like, wow, this guy is like almost advocating for, segregation as well, in terms of saying like, oh, I'm going to stand up to a person of color and whatever. But you and I have had talks, and it's quite the opposite. You're actually wanting to unify under a meritocracy. Go figure. Can you talk a little bit about your ideas on that?
Well, we need to get away from labelism. Like everybody, the left's weapon is identity, right? That's it. You identify as this, I identify as this. It's like a team. It's like teams competing. And it really is, ultimately, it's political power and money. That's the team competition. But it gets ugly in the streets when you send out the most violent people of your pack, right, to take to the streets. Then you see that part of it. We need to quit talking, oh, you're a Republican, so you're racist, right? In the gay community, I heard that a lot, right? And when I said gay community, I meant groups of gays, right? There is no community. Straight versus gay, right? Man versus woman. All of these different identity tribes lead to tribalistic wars. That's why a lot of countries on planet Earth are nowhere near our success, because they fight with each other nonstop. We got to get away from that, get back to just American ideas. Hey, we're all in this together. I don't care what your skin color is. Let's get along, right? There are good people from every single one of those little identity groups that the left wants to create. And I think that's what has to happen. It's not about, it's Well, there's a list of affinity groups for this group, but none for this group. Aren't you into fairness? See, I'm a merit, fairness, and equality guy, MFE, right? DEI is the opposite. On paper, it looks good for a long time ago when we needed it after the civil rights movement, but now it's morphed into nothing more than third wave feminists and Marxism and racialized Marxism. So it's like, we got to get away from that. But most people in America don't even know what those words are I just said. How do I know that? I didn't know what they were 3 years ago.
Yeah, Dr. Bray, that's exactly it though, man. This is kind of hard to talk about because it's like, I think it was because I was exposed to it at the very beginning. In 2011 and 2012, I started observing this. I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what to call it back then. This is when I was like graduating, high school and everything before I joined the Marine Corps. And I just observed it as a cultural shift. And it was barely there at the time. And I warned people about it. I remember a conversation at a lunch table in my high school, and I was talking about Facebook. And I was saying okay, guys, on Facebook, I feel like something's starting to happen to where a certain ideological group is starting to grow, and they're being put out there a heck of a whole lot more than other individuals. And people laughed at me oh, that's conspiratorial and whatever. I was like, yeah, hey, whatever, man. But now we look now, and we come to find Twitter, for example, absolutely was doing that kind of stuff in terms of blocking ideology and promoting different ideology, right? And now it's no longer conspiratorial. But point being is this shift from the fact that you are not a victim. Society is not victimizing you. You just have been dealt a certain hand. You have to try a little bit harder than maybe somebody else, but you have every opportunity to be something great. Where has that gone?
So when you say try harder, then we should get rid of that. A young lady on LinkedIn said, I have a response. She called me a white supremacist. I told her she could very well be a black supremacist and or a toxic feminist. LinkedIn pulled my statement down, said I violated their rights. So I lit them up via email, and voila, 5 days later, I got my rights back and they put it back up, right? That's what people need to keep doing, by the way. In her statement, she said, I have to work twice as hard to get the same as somebody else because of her skin color and her gender. She couldn't measure that, though. How do you measure twice? Twice is a number. It's two times. Tell me your methodology, right? No, that's something you've been told over and over again, and so you think it's like natural law. No, how do you measure I had to work twice as hard? How do you measure how hard Dr. Bray worked, right? I was born, I lived in a trailer park until I was 5, right? People called me nasty names, all of that stuff. And look, I'm a tenured professor in the greatest country on earth, right? Everything I have, I worked for. And when people talk about, privilege this and privilege that, I'm like, you need a time machine and go back in time. Right now, you actually have the privilege. I don't. I have the privilege of being blamed for all of your shortcomings. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you for your service. No, Dr. Bray, that's such a good point, man. And I'm glad you kind of checked me on that because that's true. That's some of the stuff that they say. It absolutely is. And when you think about it, it's like, okay, you were born in a trailer park. You were born in circumstances.
Born in a trailer park. I was born in a hospital. I did go.
Are you sure? Yeah, I feel like you'd be more victimized if you said you were born in a trailer park. You sure you want to go with that? We can edit out some stuff, man. No, but seriously, you were circumstantially you were dealt these cards. But look where you're at now, right? It's because you knew that you had to work.
And I wouldn't change it for anything.
No, of course not, man. What was that like, by the way? Growing up in that kind of situation and moving to where you are now.
Well, we moved from the trailer park out to the middle of nowhere. We had no neighbors because that's where land was cheap and to build a house was cheap. I grew up fat. I grew up with pimples on my face. I played the clarinet. I was gay. I am gay. Life wasn't always easy, right? Everything I've accomplished, I can thank my parents for my values, right? But I busted my ass. And everybody else can go out there and do the same thing and quit looking for an excuse to blame other people for your shortcomings or not making it as far as you want. Dr. Thomas Sowell actually said that social justice is two things added together. Social justice is just envy and rhetoric. Right? It makes people feel good to say, oh, this is the reason that I don't have as much as he or she does, right? Oh, it's my skin color, it's my gender, it's my sexual orientation. It's the victimology class that actually comes straight from universities.
It does, man. You know, it absolutely does. And here's something I want to challenge you with, because I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think of like what folks would like try and challenge you while they listen to this conversation. So, you know, you say like you grew up during a time, if you will, when being gay wasn't so accepted in society, right? So if an individual came up to you and said like, okay, well, you know, it was people like me who promoted this social justice, this social idea that gays could be accepted. It's people like me today that is just doing the next thing for, you know, the victimized people of today's time in society. What would you kind of talk to them about? You know, would you tell them like, hey, you're wrong, or what would be your feelings about that?
I would tell them, you really got to check your self-esteem, because it's not people like you who made it better. We're on TV more, right? We're in movies more, things like that. I always go back to this idea, especially now, right? When people want to give me a grievance about being homosexual or something. Most Americans have no problem with you, right? If you weren't so fucking obnoxious, people might like you and want to be around you. It's this idea, and the left has this new term, authentic self. Everybody should be their authentic self. Well, no, if you're an asshole, I don't want you to be your authentic self. I want you to be a different version of yourself, right? It's this authenticity. It's like, no. Just be a normal, reasonable person. Don't scream at people. Don't blame them for your shortcomings. And people, straight, white, Christian men, I think are going to be okay with you. Who cares what they think about you? I tell people this all the time. As soon as you get to a place where you can actually say, I don't give a rat's ass what people think about me, that's freedom, right? I don't care if my neighbor thinks I'm going to hell because I'm homosexual, I could give two shits. I'm going to live my life. They're going to live their life. I don't care, as long as they don't physically harm me or get into my personal life, right? That's basically it. And I think most Americans are on that same page. And we're pretending. I don't know why we're pretending, but we're pretending that these used to be marginalized classes still exist.
Yeah, you know, that's exactly it. And in a way, like they're almost these activists, these social activists that are there for you, are kind of shoving their existence into yours. They're saying that, oh, you know, you are a victim. They are labeling you as a victim. Right? And almost kind of like saying that I'm above you and I am here to protect you and take care of you. That's almost like nihilistic in a way, man, if you think about it. You know what I mean? Who are you to like protect me? Like, bro, I'm fine.
I said today on LinkedIn, if these people could be true engineers of something useful, they would. They don't have the intellect to put together a puzzle.
So are you dealing with anything right now, man? Is there anything crazy going on?
No, so LinkedIn has been my platform, and it will continue to be so. I've gotten some business contacts and people who are interested in the voice. And we're trying to push forward with some things, some initiatives, maybe a public speaking engagement that I will not get paid for. And once I start to make one penny, I will, before that, fill out a conflict of interest form with my current employer. But yeah, it looks like LinkedIn can also bring rational people together as well. So I'm excited about that, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, bringing in rational people, Dr. Bray, that's exactly it. That's exactly what needs to happen going forward. You need to be able to have these conversations. It's like, you know, over here, I'm Mr. White Christian male straight, and you're over there, it's like, I'm a gay guy. And I've dated black people and, you know, all of this. And I think this stuff is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that we're able to sit down, have a talk over coffee and a Monster, seems to be your preference. You know, man, that's what I miss about all this stuff. It's like, you know, if you come to somebody and you try to talk to them about, you know, their paradigm that they live in, this woke stuff, right? They immediately go on the defensive and it's like, shut down. We're not having this conversation anymore. I'm going to like be overbearing to the point of like, you're just not going to get your word in. I love this. And I think it's going to continue. I do think it's going to continue. We got just like a couple minutes left. Do you want to say anything to folks? Do you want to kind of encourage maybe students, man, maybe students even?
Yeah, just speak out, right? I mean, find your voice, because, you know, you could be the generation, the college students right now could be the generation to reverse this horse shit, right? A colleague of mine at Texas A&M just released a piece today in the College Fix about faculty like myself. We're not the problem, not even the woke faculty, because the administrators have all the power. And the administrators should have canceled the woke faculty members. And when I say cancel them, I mean cancel their ridiculous initiatives, right? If they're tenured, you can't get rid of them without cause, right? But it's the administrators that have the power. And so if taxpayers want to end this shit, and they should in every state, they should go after the college administrators, including the presidents, the chancellors, and the Board of Regents, and all the big wigs at the university systems are the people that are in charge of this toxic nonsense continuing. It might emulate from the faculty members in these grievance studies departments, right? What we should hopefully see in the future, I'm hoping, we see that the social justice monster goes back into its cage, back into the what I like to call the majors that are going to produce the future protesters of America, because they're not going to have a career. They're wasting their time on a college campus.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bray. To the viewers, I just want to say, if you're enjoying the content, please let me know. Please let me know, because I'm having basically a 30-minute conversation with Dr. Bray. But if I could have, I don't know, maybe an hour conversation with Dr. Bray and you guys would enjoy that, I want to know if that's what you want. I also want to know some questions. Send me some questions. Maybe next time Dr. Bray comes and joins me at the coffee table, I can have some questions, as well as a mug with my ego planted on it that you can pour your monster into, man. So yeah, guys, I love the interaction. I love that you guys are joining us for this conversation, because I think it's one that needs to be had. I think it's one that, even both sides need to start having with one another, for that matter. Because we really do need to get down to the nitty-gritty as to the foundation of why we think the way that we think, and see if there is some kind of unity that can come from this. And Dr. Bray, you're starting that conversation, man, and I really appreciate it, and I look forward to our next conversation. Cheers, bud.
Yes, sir.